Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cozy English Corner. I am Alex, and I am sitting here in our studio in Columbus, Ohio, watching the sky change colors. It is April, which means we might get sunshine, rain, or a snowstorm all in the same afternoon.
That is the absolute truth. I was walking down High Street this morning in a winter coat, and by noon I had to take it off because of the humidity.
Exactly. That is just life in the Midwest. Speaking of life in the Midwest, I want to introduce my guest today. This is Harper. She owns a bakery down in German Village.
Thank you for having me, Alex. It is a pleasure to sit down and actually take a break. The bakery rarely allows for quiet moments.
I understand that completely. Today, we are talking about grammar, but as always, we are looking at the psychology behind the words. Specifically, we are exploring three very heavy structures: should be, and should have.
Those three phrases are probably the story of my adult life. I feel like my entire day is dictated by what I should be doing.
That is exactly why I wanted you here, Harper. Let us start with the basic form. Should plus a base verb. We use this to express advice, obligation, or expectation for the present or future. For example, I should exercise more.
Right. For me, it is always business related. I should update my inventory. I should market my bakery better. It sounds like simple advice, but internally, it feels like an obligation that I am failing to meet.
That makes perfect sense. In English, should is a modal verb. It is softer than must, but stronger than could. However, psychologically, we treat it like an absolute command. There is a concept in cognitive behavioral therapy created by psychologist Albert Ellis.
I think I have heard of this. Does it have to do with the pressure we put on ourselves?
Yes. He coined a term called masturbation, which means we make ourselves miserable by constantly telling ourselves what we must or should do. We should all over ourselves, and it triggers the anxiety center in our brain.
That is fascinating and deeply accurate. When I say, I should go to the gym, I am not just giving myself a polite recommendation. I am secretly judging myself for sitting on the couch.
Precisely. And that brings us to the second form, should be, followed by an adjective, a noun, or an ing verb. This structure describes states or ongoing actions. For example, you should be sleeping now, or I should be happy.
Oh, I should be happy. That is a heavy one. In our culture, especially here in the Midwest, where everyone acts cheerful at the grocery store, if you are struggling, you think, I have a home, I have a job, I should be happy.
That is the exact pain point. Should be highlights the gap between reality and expectation. Let's practice the grammar itself forces you to compare your current state with an imagined perfect state. What is a should be that keeps you awake at night?
Honestly, money. I am 38 years old. I look at my business loans and my credit card debt from keeping the bakery afloat during quiet winters, and I think I should be financially secure by now. I should be saving for retirement.
Notice your grammar there. I should be financially secure. You used should be plus an adjective. Then you said, I should be saving. That is should be plus an ongoing action, a verb with an ing. Both forms show a deep insecurity about the present moment.
It is strange how learning the grammar actually explains the psychology. I am criticizing my current reality. I am basically telling myself that my present state is unacceptable.
Yes, and society feeds these. Social media constantly tells us what our lives should be like. But there is a second surprising fact I want to share. A study from the University of Bath showed that perfectionism, driven by these should statements, is rising significantly among young adults today compared to previous generations.
I see it every day. I have young employees at the bakery who are so stressed. They feel they should be managing a team or they should be buying a house, even though the economy here in Ohio makes that incredibly difficult right now.
Economic realities definitely clash with our grammatical expectations. Now, let us move to the darkest of the three structures, should have, plus a past participle. We use this to talk about things that did not happen in the past. It is the language of pure regret.
The phrase, I should have. That is the one that really hurts. It is looking backward at a door that is already closed.
Exactly. For our listeners learning English, the structure is the subject, plus should have, plus the past participle of the verb. For example, I should have studied. It means I did not study, and now I criticize myself for it.
I find myself using this when I look at my aging parents. They live just outside Columbus, and I am always busy at the bakery. Every time a holiday passes, I tell myself I should have spent more time with them.
I understand that guilt. I should have spent. Spent is the past participle of spend. When we use this form, we are punishing ourselves for a timeline we cannot change. We carry the weight of an altered past.
It is also used for criticizing others, right? If an employee makes a mistake, the immediate thought is, you should have known better, or you should have checked the oven temperature.
Yes, it is the perfect tool for past criticism. You should have known. But we have to be careful. When we constantly tell people what they should have done, we build resentment. It does not fix the mistake. It only highlights the failure.
That is a great leadership lesson. I try to catch myself. Instead of saying, we should have ordered more flour, I try to focus on the next step. But it is hard because should have is so deeply wired into our language.
It really is. Let us quickly address a very common mistake native English speakers make, which can confuse learners. In spoken English, should have is often contracted to should of. Because of how it sounds, people mistakenly write should of.
Oh, I see that all the time in emails. Even I catch myself typing, I should have called you. It sounds identical when you speak quickly.
Exactly. But grammatically, should of does not exist. It is always should have plus the past participle. Another common error is forgetting the have entirely and saying I should went instead of I should have gone.
Grammar rules are strict, but they make communication clear. I want to ask you about the negative forms, because saying I shouldn't have done that feels just as common.
Yes, the negative forms follow the exact same patterns. Should not contracts to shouldn't. So for present advice, say, you shouldn't worry so much. For a present state, you shouldn't be working so late. And for past regret, I shouldn't have said that.
That last one, I shouldn't have said that, is something everyone experiences. You speak out of anger, maybe during a busy shift when an order is wrong, and 5 minutes later, you feel terrible.
It is a universal human experience, and it is important for English learners to master this because expressing regret politely is a vital social skill in American culture. We use shouldn't have to repair relationships.
That makes sense. If I tell a customer, I should have double-checked your order, it shows accountability. It is much better than just saying, sorry, a mistake happened.
Exactly. Taking ownership using should have builds trust. Now, what about expectations that did not happen? For example, the package should have arrived yesterday. It is not exactly regret, but rather disappointment.
Oh, we deal with that constantly with suppliers. The flour delivery should have been here by 6 a.m. It expresses that we expected a certain outcome based on a schedule, but reality failed us.
That is the perfect usage. It highlights an unfulfilled expectation. Now, Harper, I want to ask you a deeper question. We have explored the burden of should. How do we navigate a life so filled with these heavy grammatical structures?
It is difficult. For me, I try to replace I should with I want to or I choose to. Instead of saying I should be working on the accounts, I say I choose to work on the accounts because it secures my business. It takes away the guilt.
That is a brilliant linguistic shift. You are moving from a modal verb of obligation to a verb of personal agency. Should implies external pressure. Choose implies internal power.
It is necessary for survival. If I let every should have regarding my past financial decisions weigh me down, I would never open the bakery doors in the morning.
Let us quickly review the three structures so our listeners can solidify this. First, present advice. I should exercise. Subject plus should plus base verb.
Second, the present state or ongoing action. I should be exercising right now, or I should be healthy. Subject plus should be, plus the ing verb or adjective.
Exactly. And finally, the past regret or criticism. I should have exercised yesterday. Subject plus should have plus the past participle. 3 distinct times, 3 distinct feelings.
It is amazing how a tiny verb like have or be completely changes the timeline of our emotions.
Language is the operating system of the mind. When you master these forms, you not only speak better English, you understand human behavior better. Harper, thank you for sharing the realities of running a business and the emotional weight behind these words.
Thank you, Alex. It was refreshing to talk about the grammar of my anxiety instead of just experiencing it. And if anyone in Columbus is listening, come grab a pastry in German Village. You absolutely should.
I highly recommend it. To all our listeners, your challenge this week is to notice when native speakers use should be, and should have. Listen for the regret, the expectation, and the advice. Practice writing sentences for each form. And remember, be kind to yourself. Do not let the shoulds ruin your present moment. Subscribe to Cozy English Corner. Keep practicing, and we will see you in the next episode.